and I was recently there in the end of July and beginning of August. So we'll divide the presentation into kind of two segments. First will be the overall overview about Nordic Approach and how we work there, what's happening on the ground, and the state of naturals. And then we'll go a bit into the weeds of the season so far and how it relates to numbers that you will see on paper and suppliers, resilience, and the state of affairs in terms of our supply chain. And then we'll end up by looking forward into what I hope plays out. So just to start at the very basic, this is a map of Peru, and the red highlights the coffee belt that runs through the whole country from the north to the south. Nordic Approach has started its business and has mainly been focused in the north in two provinces, in Cajamarca and Amazonas, and within those we found beautiful pockets that really have great natural characteristics for great coffee. From last year and this year on the table, we have now moved into the south, which is very exciting because there's a lot of potential. And here we are in the Cusco and Ayacucho regions. So Nordic is here, and there is a lot more to be discovered and experienced. So the landscape of our supply network is characterized between cooperatives and individual companies. We currently work with 6 suppliers, 5 in the north and 1 in the south. And of the suppliers in the north, one of them is a cooperative who is covering a massive area called Cooperatives, and they are very geared towards like socio-economic impact programs. Uplifting women producers in potential is a huge part of their the way they are set up. They're not the most well-resourced, but they are really a nice like engine of a cooperative that does a lot of good. The others are all private companies stemming from our original supplier, Origin Coffee Lab, and from there there were people that left Origin Coffee Lab and started their own thing. But the values of all these companies are all pretty much the same, and the way that they operate are the same. So it is either like a individual farmer who has then decided to commit to specialty and start his or her own company and bring on their mother, their father, and their cousin. And then it's like you start a small company and there's just 4 producers. And they might make a blend of themselves and then try and do small elevations, microlots. So there's a number of those. And what is also cool about the private companies that we work with, that the producers are relatively young. I'd say 50% of the producers that are in these private companies are 30 and below, which I think is really exciting. And these two in particular have got massive potential. This is Mercy Fernandez from Origin Coffee Lab, and this is Rory Rosenberg from Coffee Coffee. Really committed and dedicated and forward-thinking young producers. Okay, so what is actually happening on the ground? How is coffee being produced in Peru? It's still very early days in terms of experimental processing, in terms of, I don't know, all the other things that you will find and experience in Colombia and potentially in Honduras as well. There's not that much going on in Peru. But what is happening, we are working together with producers to kind of make it even better before we move on to the next step. So there's been a lot of foundational work that has been done by Morten and Joanne from 2019 until like 2023, and that was focused heavily on wash coffees. So getting exposed to the landscape and the flavor profiles, figuring out which regions can be put together potentially and which regions have certain like very distinct profiles. Working on terms of varieties, so cutting out bad varieties that don't present well, like Katimor, we completely cut that out. And then working with suppliers and producers on much better separation, both at the farm level and then at the supplier level. What is happening a lot, and what we are working with to kind of make a little bit better, is a style called frutos maduras, which just means ripe fruits in Spanish. It involves, so these two producers here have the resources to have these blue tanks, but there are a lot of producers that we work with that don't have those resources. Frutos maduras is a process, it's a washed coffee process, but it involves two fermentations. First in cherry for about up to 72 hours. Then the producers will depulp the coffee. They will take the mucilage once again, put them in clean barrels, and ferment them for another 72 hours, after which they will wash their coffee. This type of processing lifts the profile and gives it quite a deep and chunky and often a berry-driven profile, which is great, but if not aided and assisted, can lead to some weird flavors, some over-ferment, some sour. So we as Nordic, we've worked a little bit to setting some parameters in a way to aid and facilitate frutos maduras, but it is definitely a system that we support. The profiles are really fantastic, and they're everywhere. It's been kind of a thing as Peru has moved away from organic being the signifier of quality towards more specialty orientated profiles. Frutos maduras has been that vehicle that has taken a lot of producers. I mean, some of them are still organic, but some of them have definitely thrown in the towel and are just moving towards specialty. There are new regions popping up. In the north, for example, we are now working in Chirinos and volatile, which are new regions for us from last year. And then, obviously, the south is a totally new region with really cool profiles. These farms, I will touch a bit on it later, but these farms, some of them are literally in the clouds. We're talking 2,400 and above. Really fantastic profiles just naturally coming out of there. But in the north, during this type of context, one of the things that has really aided us and will continue to aid us is the commitment that Nordic has to individual producers and not steering away from that no matter what is happening, and just continuing to helping them with their processing. A lot of producers tried naturals this year, which will be something I talk about next, and we have given a lot of critical feedback where it's just it's great that you're trying, but this did not work this year. Let's try again next year, and just maybe stop where you are right now, because when I was there at least, I was cupping a lot of the first pickings, so there will be normally 3 pickings throughout the season, and we were cupping the first pickings of naturals from some of the dedicated producers that we were working, and it was not great. So we just said that, look, this is not the year to do this, but we will support you as it goes forward. And then, the offering list changes. We'll be like, okay, no more naturals, this much washed. And it's that type of feedback that is really important for both the producers and ourselves. Okay, talking about naturals. There is a demand for naturals overall. Maybe not so much in the Norwegian market, but in the markets that Nordic Approach works in, there's definitely a growing demand for naturals. Naturals in Peru are not such a thing, or not such a good thing, put it that way. And the individual producer sits with a dilemma that they have. They hear that there is a premium offered for natural processed coffees. They have a basic understanding of how it is done. Some producers are able to achieve this without any heavy investment into their operations on their farm. But if it fails, which it has done for some of our producers this year, there is no real internal market within Hainan, which is the coffee city of the north, to absorb these coffees from these producers if we, as Nordic Approach and other importers those coffees don't reach our minimum quality standards. So a producer will pick, or he will have his pickers or her pickers pick all the cherries. They will look up and be like, it's not raining today, let's give it a go. They will try. And that has worked in the past, that some producers have been able to achieve really small and bright micro lots of naturals. But this year we've had a real issue with moderate, persistent rain throughout. There's been rain throughout August, which is not so common. And last year I didn't see any of this, but this year I saw a lot of cherries on the trees bursting in their skin from absorbing so much water. And some producers were still trying to produce natural coffee with cherries that look like this. And that is just, it's just a massive risk. And so the reward is the carrot, right? But the risk is so much bigger because to achieve the reward, you have to meet so many minimum quality standards that are really, really high. But there is just not the experience and the resources at the moment. So on an individual producer level, at least in our supply chain, there's very little naturals historically. And in this year, I think, yeah, maybe there's 1 or 2 out of our whole supply chain, which is more than a 50% drop from last year. But we continue to work and look for a solution for this problem because the demand is there. The natural quality of the coffees produced in these regions is there. So Nordic Approach has teamed up, well, discovered and teamed up with 2 companies, 1 company and 1 cooperative. First one is JJ Mark. It's a small company. It is a son, Juan Carlos, his dad, Juan Carlos, and his dad's old friend, Bismarck. And they came up with this very original name, JJ Mark. So it's J for Juan Carlos, J for his dad, and Mark, the end of Bismarck's name. The 3 of them are focused in one area, which is a new region for us. It's called Volatile. It's about 2 hours out of Haiyan. And what they have done is decided to detach the process a little bit and focus on the area where individual producers don't have the resources and the know-how to successfully produce naturals. So what they do is that they've selected certain farmers, use time and resources and energy to talk to them about varieties, pickings, and variety combinations. They then buy cherry from the producers and they will do fermentations in their warehouse. So they built a warehouse in Wabal, which is 1800, 1900, sometimes 2000 meters above sea level, but the factory, the warehouse itself sits at 1850. They built it it's quite large, and they are not at all anywhere close to capacity in terms of the amount of barrels they have. And to a certain degree, it is temperature controlled within the limitations of their context. So they will collect cherry, they will buy cherry, they will ferment it in these blue barrels for 72 hours is the minimum or the standard, and it will go up to 120, which is 5 days. And then they will put these on the back of a truck, drive them down to an area called Zananga, which has a totally different climate. It's like at the base level of Haiyan. We're still pretty high up, but it's the bottom of the valley, 2 hours away from where they are fermented and picked, and it is hot and dry here. And here they have built, this is probably just a third of the drying beds that they have set up. What they then do is then they control the drying here on a large scale. And we've been working with them for 3 years now. The first year we were just, I wasn't actually here, so I'm not too sure what happened the first year. Last year though, we bought what they were producing and what they thought was good. And it was good, it's a good starting point, but there were a number of issues, both in terms of traceability and kind of alignment in terms of values as to how they were doing. So this year, I've worked with Juan Carlos a lot to work on microlots, which is a different type of concept because we will put all the information about the farmer and their farms and the varieties and the way they do things, but the end result is really what they've done, So it's like this 50-50 split of these microlots. We've worked on smaller lots, we've worked on variety specific, and we've worked on some fermentation techniques. This year, we have a lot more goals we would like to achieve with them, but this has not really been the year to take a lot of risk. So we haven't pushed the fermentation as much as we would like. That will be on next year's agenda. But here, it's important to understand the way the economics of their business work. So there's this weird thing that you have to pay more for cherry than you do for parchment in the north, even though there's a lot more work required from the producer to sell parchment. So just to give you like a full understanding, if I'm a producer, I will pick the cherries, I will depulp, I'll maybe do frutos maduras, I will dry, I will do basic sorting, and I will make my quintals of parchment with it, which is 55.5 kgs of parchment. Then I will drive down to the city and I will sell that. That's a lot of work, right? Now, Juan Carlos and his dad and Bismarck, they will meet the producers at their farm and say like, you don't have to do all of that work. I will buy the cherry from you. All you have to do is pick this variety and it has to be this ripe, and we will do the rest. There's far less work involved, but the producers want a higher price. They understand that there's a premium for naturals, and so there is this power dynamic that they kind of have, because their business is totally dependent on getting cherries from producers.
Sorry, Rory, the power dynamic is in favour of who?
More of the producer, I would say. Because the producer will say like, yeah, we know, but if I sell my coffee to you, it's also a cultural element, is my understanding. If I sell my coffee to you, I don't actually get to go to Cheyenne and be a part of like selling my coffee, meeting all my other friends, having a nice time, celebrating, come back with like a lot of money in hand. So there's this aspect that they will now like go clip of, or I think that was Norwegian. So they have to pay more, and what they are paying is about 7 to 10% more than what the producer would get for parchment. So it's like, for me it was a bit of an interesting thing to realize, okay, that's quite interesting, but it's fundamental and it will not change is my understanding. So that already takes the cost of this product higher, right? And then we as Nordic Approach have now come to Juan Carlos and said, look dude, you're doing great things, but can we do more? And he's like, yeah, we can, but it's going to cost you. Why is it going to cost me? He breaks it down to the item line. To be honest, I have maybe about a 95% understanding of the unit costs of this guy's company. He's been so open and shared everything with me. I have his Excel sheets, and I understand their profit margins, and that is really important because I am able to tell you why these coffees are potentially so expensive, and it builds a very open and trusting relationship. So we've got some of these coffees on the table. The quality has improved a lot this year, and I think that the future looks pretty bright for this project. Like I mentioned, the small project, they produce around 250 to 300 bags per year or per season, and Nordic roughly purchases between like maybe a third of that volume. So the relationship is as equally important for them as it is for us. We are a very important partner for them. That's the one solution that Nordic Approach is working with in relation to naturals. The other is the cooperative in the south. Joanne and I traveled to the south last year. We got a tip from Jose, who is the founder of OCL. He traveled with us and made the introduction. It is a large-ish cooperative. They are 20 years old. They are profitable and well-managed and well-run. They've had the same manager for almost all those 20 years. A really, really nice guy. They have about 500 members, 13 comités, and the elevations are great. And here, as I mentioned earlier, some of these farms are literally in the clouds. And what is great is that there are these communal processing stations. So the farmers and the producers here are not well resourced in any way or shape or form. And so they depend heavily on the cooperative to produce decent coffee that is can enter the market successfully and build a good reputation. Up until, well, they have been doing naturals for a lot of that 20 years, but for the last 3 to 4 years, there hasn't actually been an incentive to produce naturals because wash coffees have been selling so high. And that has continued over last year and this year. And the reason we wanted to work with them is because they have this massive capacity to do a lot of naturals. But when we visited, it was actually quite, not run down, but not in use. They hadn't used it for 3 years. So Nordic Approach almost had to come in this like catalytic kind of position to like start it up again. And we have done that now. We've asked them, so Joanne and I and Jose, we cupped quite a lot of their coffees last year. And from the feedback and our notes, we were able to like select certain areas that showed potential. And then I worked with the young guy you see in the back of Emil Saulo, and we kind of focused on these comités. The ones I remember right now is Setrobamba and Pakyabamba, and they range between comités that are 19 to 45 families large, ranging from 1800 to 2100 meters. And they then worked with these comités to once again start up the natural production, but with some of the guidance from us. So they are also doing fermentations in grain pro bags. So this is Claudio, he's the manager, and Saulo's manager. And so they are traveling to the comités that we have selected with them, and they are educating and kind of promoting the way of producing naturals that we would like. And the results, this is the first year we're working together. And I think the results are pretty good as a foundation to work on. And I think there is a lot of potential here. There is a lot of individual producers that have their farms from 2,100 to 2,400. There are some interesting varieties in this area, like SL9. So we believe that this is a great relationship to start. And I think that, I just think there's a lot of potential here, coming back to the naturals, specifically with naturals. They have their own mold, which is also great. So there's a lot of control from the beginning to the end. Okay, so I just wanted to talk a bit about what has happened this year particularly. I'm sure you've all heard and seen the high prices, the volatility, and that has just been the reality of basically since September last year, maybe, or October last year. But in Peru, there's been a number of added pressures that have made prices higher and a constant topic, potentially more than other origins. We don't work on a differential format in Peru with the supply chains, at least for Nordic spot coffee. We don't do that, which means that we have to agree on an outright price when we contract. And that is also where understanding our suppliers' Excel sheets comes in handy, and it just reaffirms the openness and trust. In the internal market, in the north I'm specifically talking about now, is there has been a persistent high demand for coffees. And it is coffees between the 82 and the 86 range. We don't work at the bottom range, but we do have communal blends and regional blends at the 86 range. The high demand is coming from some contracts that were rolled over from last year that are quite large and that were already in place before the season even started. So there was a high demand before anybody even had coffee to sell, which kind of, it just creates a high demand. And internal big players have to offer pretty high premiums. So other players in the market that operate on differentials, for an example, our sister company in Jaén, Coinca, for them to buy an 84 scoring coffee that's organic and what they call clean cup, their starting point is a plus 80 cents differential, and they have a floor of $4. What that meant was that throughout the season, they would not buy coffee less than $4 that is scoring 84. This is from producers and from other comités, And if they are buying from producers, it is potentially not sorted, so there is still a lot of work to be done. If you had to apply that to the price around now, so let's just say it's 370 plus 80, you're at 450, you're automatically at like $9.50 to $10 a kg for unsorted parchment that scores 84. That is expensive, and that is the reality. Another thing that has been adding pressure is the currencies. So the Peruvian sol is 8% stronger than it was this time last year, meaning that the amount of dollars, so obviously producers get paid in soles, which is the Peruvian currency, paid quintal, and let's just throw a number out there, so like, yeah, I don't know, but you will have to pay more dollars for the same amount of soles. So our suppliers are paying more than what they did last year. There is a higher demand at higher prices, all putting pressure on this. And on top of that, you have a sea market that's doing this throughout the year, right? The beginning of the year, pre-season, at least I felt it was a more slower volatility, so it was like progress over 2 months maybe, but the last couple of months could be massive swings within 2 weeks. And the way that Nordic Approach and our suppliers have tried to navigate this is to work a bit with speed, right? So it seems like a natural thing to do when the market is down, you act now, right? But if you act now, nobody can see into the future. So are you acting now? And it might go even further if you have suppliers that need contracts so that they can get financing, but the market is not where we want it to be. Do we act now? Because it could crash next week and then we're sitting with really expensive coffee. That has been a huge challenge to navigate, and there has been an element of risk that we've had to take, and some choices have been made. And we did contract early for some of the coffees, and that was to both allow our suppliers to have contracts in hand to get financing, and for ourselves to be able to just start the ball in terms of getting coffees, because you have to get coffee, you can't just wait for the market to go down, you just don't know. So who is benefiting, right? Who is making money throughout these volatile markets? And the producers are definitely making money. The producers that we work through our supply chain network are benefiting 100%, which is fantastic, and which is like the reason a lot of us are in here for, right? And you can see it. You can go onto the farms, you can see that they built new drying beds. Producers, some of them have got a new house, which is great because what they used to have was not so great. There is a premium being offered for the dedicated farmers, so the price is already high, but then our suppliers need to offer a premium to continue this incentivizing them to do the work. Some suppliers have fallen off the bandwagon because you don't actually have to do the work. In a market like this, you could just pulp, wash, put it in a bag, and sell it, and you will get much more money than you've ever gotten since you decided to start specialty coffee, doing all that work. And some suppliers have fallen off the bandwagon, so the amount of suppliers that producers that we were actually offered decreased quite a bit. And we heard stories of certain producers chasing price at different suppliers or buyers, which is natural. So, but who is struggling or suffering in this this market? That would be actually our suppliers. Our suppliers we are at the end, well, you guys are at the end for your customers, but our suppliers on the ground are really in a tough place because they have the external market and the internal market both pressing on them at the same time. On top of that, they have really high interest rates on any type of third-party financing. And on top of that, they went out of 2024 with a profit margin that they then planned and projected would be able to buy them this many certain containers of coffee to start their year and to start them well. Coming into the 2025 season, that money being more than halved, and cash flow and liquidity is just extremely tough. And we've heard this because we have such open relationships with our suppliers. We talk to them daily, weekly. They are struggling, but they are really trying. They are cutting costs where they can cut costs. And we as Nordic Approach are also doing what we can. We are leveraging some other relationships that are new to aid in quicker payments. I think that's the biggest one we're doing. To aid in the cash flow, we're looking to get money to our suppliers faster. And all of this is like, how do we ensure that there is still quality achieved, and in an origin like Peru, still growth being achieved in this type of markets. And it is just as simple as sticking to the strategy of relationships, making sure that all the work that was done by Joanne and Morten in the first 5-6 years, we just keep with those people, the dedicated producers, we stay with them, and we don't take too many risks, but enough risk to ensure that we are moving the goal a little bit forward. I also wanted to use the opportunity just to discuss the topic of organic versus conventional coffees. I don't know how many of you this is important for, and Peru is one of the countries where organic has been the vehicle that has made them a very successful coffee producing country. A lot of our suppliers are and have been organic certified, fair trade certified, a lot of certification basically. That has normally been the signifier and the standard for quality and getting that premium. We are now seeing, and have been seeing for a couple of years, that individual producers and small companies are moving away from that because there is a large cost that is annual that individual producers and our small suppliers have to incur. And in the context like a year like this, some people have outright said that, look, this is not happening this year, and that has just had to be the case. And the quality is still there, and we have to just support them to ensure that the quality keeps growing. But we have also ensured that the larger lots and the information that I get from the sales team, at least, about what needs to stay organic, stays organic. I think this is going to be a conversation that will be happening every year and will be changing. I think because of the landscape of our supply network, where we are divided between individual companies and cooperatives, I think the cooperatives will stay organic. So microlots and projects coming through those cooperatives will stay organic. It is in their interest. But the smaller companies, I think, will struggle and navigate with that going forward.
Rory?
Yes.
Just a quick question about that. Is this just about certification, or are they changing the way that they're like inputs and the way that they're producing coffee?
Yeah, so it's mainly about certification, the cost of certification. And producers will say that we're going to stay organic, you know, like we're not changing what we're doing. But the cost of organic fertilizer is more than non-organic fertilizer. So I don't have the skill set to look at fertilizer when I visit a farm and be like, that's not organic fertilizer. So at the moment, I'm trusting what they are saying, and they are saying that they will continue to use the inputs that make them organic. I think the answer is time will tell, to be honest.
So they're spending a lot of money on certification.
Yes, they are spending a lot of money on certification. And the smaller the company, so for example in the north we have like a company that maybe is 7 producers together, and that's the company, and then they have access to another cooperative that they get a large lot from. But for that company, 7 producers, and then this cost that is yearly for both each producer and then for the company itself adds up to a lot of money. And I recall some big numbers, but I don't want to take the risk of saying that big number and then turns out that this is wrong. But the numbers are very significant. So, looking forward to 2026 and 2030. Oh, I just put it there. I mean, who knows what's going to happen. Yeah, absolutely. Growing the supply chain. Super excited for the south. And I think there is coffees in the center. The same person that introduced us to the south has been dropping hints about the center. He's very in touch with what's happening. So I would like to explore the center as well. As you saw in the beginning, there is a lot of coffee in Peru, and I have no doubt there is a lot of hidden potential too. Product development and product differentiation. Hopefully we'll come into some years where the repercussions of taking risk are far lower, and we'll be able to do some experimentation. We are already seeing some new varieties popping up like Sidra and SL9. We have seen frutos maduras be tweaked a little bit per variety, which is always nice to see. And so that will hopefully continue to a larger degree than it has this year if the context of the grander market kind of cools down. And lastly, I just wanted to put out an open invitation. Peru is a fantastic country to travel in. The people are great. If you are interested in establishing some kind of relationship long-term with some larger volumes, or you're interested in having a socio-economic impact in something, there is potential for that. And traveling is fun, tiring, but fun. And I'd love you to come and join me. So yeah, thank you.